Today I am making two very special quilty projects using just one jelly roll. I'm not doing two quilts and calling it a day. This is a gift set. Two completely different things. And the best part is they are a lot of fun to make and will take you out of your sewing rut. So here's what we're working with today. This very cute jelly roll. So 40 strips of 44 inches, give or take. Now, because we are making two projects and I want to make the most out of this pretty fabric, I need one extra fabric for binding. Yes, both of these will have binding, even though one of them is not a quilt. I'm using this white fabric right here. And the plot thickens. Okay, first project. I need half my strips, and since there's two of each, I'll just take 20 different strips. This is usually how it goes for jelly rolls, although I do have a couple of them with 40 totally different strips, like the Robert Kaufman rainbow one, for example, which was great because I was doing a Bargello color scale, so I could really use the color diversity. For this project, however, it is actually pretty perfect to have two of each because once I'm done, both projects will feature the same fabrics. So there's a continuity between the two that really works. Now, an important question. I have shown you lots of times what to do with scraps of fabric, but have I told you what to do with scraps of batting? This is what you do with your leftover batting. We need 2.5-inch strips the same length as our jelly roll strips, so let's get to it. And what we're making is a jelly roll rug, and I couldn't be more excited or more scared about it. For one thing, if you've watched me for some time now, you know that every time I sew a rug, I ruin my sewing machine. And the last one hasn't come home yet from being repaired, so I'm pretty nervous. On the other hand, making a rug out of a jelly roll and batting sounds like the most awesome idea ever. Plus, I am making the easiest jelly roll rug pattern, so if you've ever tried making a fabric rug and ended up with a bowl, this one is going to be different, I promise. And yes, you can get a roll of 2.5-inch batting strips, but this way you get to use leftover batting. And let's face it, we all have it, and we've all probably tossed yards and yards of it in the trash before figuring out what to do with it. We are making some really fun fabric tubes for our rug, and the way we do this is we take a strip, backside up, and we add a strip of batting. Then we fold the edges in, meeting the middle, and then we fold it again in half. You can pin this if you'd like before you feed it through the machine. Now, I'm lazy and I love shortcuts, so I am using these. This is a tube maker and it does exactly what I've shown you, except easier. So here's how we do this using this contraption. We feed the fabric with the batting through the big piece like so, and then we use the smaller pieces to fold it in half. We just fold this end to make it prettier, but it won't make that much of a difference by the time we're done and we start sewing. You can sew it in the middle, or you can use a 1/4 inch seam. I am using the 1/4 inch seam because it will make my life so much easier when I'm trying to sew it, and maybe it won't break my machine, so yeah. If we were doing a proper traditional jelly roll rug, this would all look very different. We would have to sew all the jelly roll strips together beforehand, and now we would be making a big long tube of fabric. This is easier, I think, at least it's easier to manage. So 20 44-inch tubes in no time. This is what we get. And now we start to have some stress-free fun, unlike what we would be doing if we were making the traditional version. I have added these 5 white tubes and I'm ready to go. We are just going to sew these tubes together, first in pairs, then 4s, then 8s, and then we put it all together. We want a tall zigzag stitch to catch both tubes, and as far as length goes, it's really up to you, if you prefer a tight stitch or a more relaxed one. Either way, if your tension is good, the stitch will hold the tubes together perfectly. Also, do not worry if your sewing machine skips a few stitches, it will not matter once you're done. Again, in a traditional jelly roll rug, a round or an oval one, you would essentially wind the large tube all around itself until you run out of it, or it got a big enough rug. And a lot can go wrong with that, because you need to keep it completely flat. It can't really fall off the machine, and you need to be careful with how close you sew them together. If you overlap them, it turns into a ball. If you don't sew them parallel and the tube starts to roll, it turns into a ball. And if you add too much tension to the tubes, you've guessed it, it turns into a ball. Here, not at all. You may get some curvy tubes, but you can flatten them with your hands or an iron, and that's pretty much it. Most importantly, if you make a mistake, it ends with that tube. There's no continuity. These are all separate pieces. And this is what I was talking about. As you nest the tubes together, the fact that you had the 1/4 of an inch seam allowance means there isn't as much bulk, which your sewing machine will thank. Mine doesn't, because she's really rude and ungrateful, but yours might, yours might be a little bit friendlier than mine. This is what we get, and I am loving it. I've mixed the colors up, but if you want to do this in larger areas of color, just group all your same color strips together and that will look awesome too. Now, this is kind of a funky shape. I am going to cut these in half and sew again. Is this not the quickest, easiest way to make a fabric rug you've ever seen? We can also make placemats or table runners this way and it will look really, really cool. In fact, now that I have done this one, I suspect I will be doing many jelly roll tube projects because this is actually really fun and addictive. All we need now is our binding. I've cut 2.5-inch strips of white fabric and we're just going to bind this as we would a quilt. I am sewing it to the back of my rug, although this really is a double-sided, you can use whichever side you prefer. And all there's left to do is to finish sewing the front, mitering those corners nicely, and before we know it, we have ourselves this awesome, one-of-a-kind, easy-peasy rug ready to go. Time for our quilt. It is a baby quilt and both these pieces are meant to be a baby gift, for a cousin that's about to have a little baby girl. I'm keeping it simple but stunning with this one, so I'm just sewing 5 strips together. This jelly roll is perfect for her nursery color scheme, so I'm pretty sure these will look absolutely awesome in there. By picking a strip quilt pattern, I'm also making sure that not only do the fabrics match, but also the patterns are somewhat similar. In fact, another really cool rug pattern would be to sew 5 tubes together, then cut them in squares, and then sew the whole thing together. I must try that next time. It will look awesome. Kind of like a rail fence quilt block. Let's press our 4 pieces quickly because we need to cut these strips into squares. We measure the width of these pieces and that's our length, so about 10.5 inches each. And now we puzzle, of course. We have 4 different types of squares and we do not want the same fabrics to touch. In fact, ideally we would have no two similar colors touch. Let's see how we do. Next step is cutting some 1-inch white strips for our sashing. This is a very similar pattern to one I made back in the fall, which you loved. It is a tablecloth or a summer quilt and it looks stunning. And while this is a completely different vibe, it will look awesome nonetheless. We add our sashing to the side of our squares, making rows, and then we add more sashing to the top of our rows like so. Let's press this real quick to make sure everything is nice and flat. Next step is to cut our batting and our backing fabric and get ready for some quilt as you go. Yeah, that's not enough batting. Change of plans! It is a summer quilt now. It is starting to get kind of hot out here. And we are almost there. We join 2 rows right sides together as we sew them together at the top. Next, we add just 1 more row and we keep doing the same until we run out of strips. All there's left for us to do now is our binding, just like we did for the rug. Let's go! We could have done some self-binding, of course, same fabric and all, but I just think that for some reason this quilt deserves that extra attention of making the bias tape. Plus, it's another connection to our lovely rug. And this is what we have, a lovely rug and a stunning baby quilt ready to go. 2 very different projects that go perfectly well together as promised. I am in love with how cute this turned out. I hope you are too, and I will see you soon. Bye bye!